Hello and welcome to Refinitiv Perspectives Live, a special episode for International Women's Day 2021. I'm Deborah Regal, a Global Account Director at DXC. Today we will explore the path to success of women in our industry, the pipeline of talent, and how we might close gaps arising from gender inequality. I'm delighted to introduce my esteemed panel of changemakers. Karen Ashley, who is Refinitiv's Head of Marketing for the Americas. Karen has over 2 decades of financial services marketing experience. She is also a volunteer for the Women's Board Club, co-chairing the Professional Development Committee for Scholars. Pinar Ermedag is an award-winning technologist who is currently the Global Head of Digital Client Services at JP Morgan. She has worked in a number of roles, previously including electronic trading, market structure, and digital assets. Pinar also has a PhD in physics from Brown University. Emily Turner is the Head of Innovation and Business Development at Citi. In addition, Emily took a sabbatical 2 years ago and interned at Car IQ, a company building solutions for cars to autonomously connect to banks and service providers. She has also spent time volunteering at God's Love We Deliver, which is a non-sectarian organisation serving people in need and their children and caregivers. Finally, we have Andy Haig, who is responsible for DXC's banking and capital markets lines of business for the UK. Andy has over 21 years experience in financial services and is a father of 3 girls. Welcome everyone. I'll start with our first question. Pinar, what does digital transformation mean to you, and why did you choose to prioritize it?
Thank you for the opportunity. I mean, this is really a great panel. I'm just excited to be here. And so digital, I think we need to define digital because it means many things to many people. At least this is what I found throughout my career. And so the way that we have been defining digital in our team is a combination of data, intelligence, what you do with data, technology, maybe / platform, and people. And those 4 things are really, really quite important. So the way that we think about digital is not just only about focusing on technology or automation or things like that. It's not just only about just going and thinking about data-driven decisions, predictions, and creation of value through data, but it also is actually a lot to do with people, the digital ethos, literally the way of thinking, the way of questioning, the way of thinking around finding the right question, and a little bit more positivity, potentially more problem solving. So I just leave it there. This is the way that we think about it, and it's exciting to me. So what we are trying to do is to combine digital with client service. That's where we are.
And thank you. Andy, if I may go to you, what is your experience on the impact that digital transformation has had on the gateway for giving more opportunities to women in the financial services?
So just to expand on Pinar's comment earlier, so digital and transformation, as Pinar mentioned, means a lot of different moving parts. You've got the kind of warfare, if you like, around holding market share and mapping out the client journey and democratizing services to what's a very high demanding client base. Behind it, you've got decommissioning and streamlining the back end, running down the cost of change, so being able to wear change more effectively, really diving down on the core machinery that sits behind the front end of the user base, and then systematically moving towards a consumption-based model, moving away from physical, from an infrastructure perspective, from an ultra high level. Now in there, you're changing the technologies. You've got a fresh view of different technologies coming in. The organizations are looking sideways and looking at fintechs to see what they're doing and leveraging those to sort of advance their position. But also you've got, you're moving away from, I need X developer with 10 years and a system that's been in the bank for 20 years, and actually creating a lot of rampways, or entry entry ramps into the organization through what is then a broad set of services that sit across that transformation agenda. So you're not looking at old technologies. You're looking at people that have got a fresh thinking, fresh technology, fresh vision, a fresh view of the client landscape, a fresh view of the client journey. And that's actually a really good entry point to change the demographic of the types of people that organizations need to do to embrace and take on their digital agenda. And again, one of the bit that we probably, or the industry doesn't do as good a job as indicating, is actually the vast arrays of roles that are required to support technology. We've come a very long way from a business analyst, a project manager, a software engineer, and a tester. There's a whole host of roles, whether it's UI, UX, data science, data modeling, automation specialist, whether it's an agile coach, a product owner, a scrum master, an alliance manager, head of creativity, head of innovation centers, all the way through to sales, marketing, HR. So there's a whole host of different roles that are required to keep that whole engine going. So again, that in itself creates more rampways for people to join organizations either within the banks or the organizations that service the banks.
And I'm interested on that point, actually. Karen, if I may ask you whether you agree with that, and whether throughout your career you've seen certain challenges and managed to overcome them, and whether you have any advice for people listening if they choose the digital career, for example.
Yeah, I do. I do agree with Andy. I often, in working with the Women's Bond Club, we have a group of scholars that we try to help nurture and mentor to assume roles, leadership roles within finance once they graduate. And a lot of them are really focused on what they know. But we all know from working that there are so many roles in an organization and how teams work together in order to, to produce, to better serve our clients. So I think, whether you're new or you're a seasoned professional, it's really opening the understanding and leaning into digital technology to better serve the customer and to have better outcomes. When I think about digital transformation, I think about marketing effectiveness. I think about better understanding the customer, providing good customer journeys, and being relevant. And so that's what, I'm leaning into, and that's what I'm thinking about. And I think for seasoned professionals, it's not to be afraid of that, but it's to really dig into it and lean into it in order to have better outcomes all around.
And that chimes well with what Pinar said at the start about data intelligence and people. It's that kind of three different spheres coming together. But Emily, if I may ask you, from a customer perspective, how has digital transformation enabled you to work closer as a distance? Are you able to share any feedback that you have received?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. We spend a lot of time thinking about this as a company and certainly as a team. I think what's true for all of us on this panel is not only are the companies that we're working in doing a huge amount in this space, but so are all of our customers. So we're all trying to transform ourselves, and we're all on digital journeys. Meanwhile, so are our customers. So meeting them where they are is sort of two moving pieces coming together at once. And I think what's been great and what we look for in the companies that we want to engage with, we look at our own teams, is there's a huge amount of humility and curiosity that comes with being successful in any of this work. And pretty much every one of the roles that Andy mentioned, to me, it's curiosity and humility, which run across all of them, along with grit and a few other things. But it's by bringing that together, when we think about the digital transformation on our side and the digital transformation with our clients, it means that we can engage not just on products and services, but also share ideas on the how, right? So how are you getting this done, or what have you learned? And it creates not just a sort of safe space and a way to do that, but also shared values, shared ambitions, and a shared way of working where you can actually come together.
And Pinar, can you share what you've done to improve and increase the pipeline of qualified female candidates? What difference are you seeing in the interview room at the moment?
Let me actually expand on the points, and it's connected. Like one can answer these in many different ways, but let me just try one perspective, right? And because if you think about digital, I mean, I agree with all that. It's actually interesting conversations, these conversations, because like wherever I look, like in every answer, I actually find something myself, like literally something that we are doing, something that's interesting, and I'm sure that we can add to it, right? Like one more thought that comes to mind is a bit of like first principle thinking, and being able to literally think through like the real reasons of why we are doing something, how we, thinking across the client journeys, thinking across like in a more people-centric way, user-centric way, and not like questioning why we have done certain things in a certain way. All these things are actually connected directly to, I think, like diversity, frankly, and kind of like like kind of fresh way of thinking about things, and grit. All these topics, in my mind, somehow are connected. So to connect this to the answer, frankly, the interview rooms are all about how we actually also define the roles as well. The roles are not anymore, like the specs, the job specs are not written in a way that are just, okay, you need to have X many years of experience in doing this and coding. Like there are literally much more reflected. All the things that we talked about, I'm pretty sure are more reflected in our job specs. And so the candidates that are more I guess who think who are actually diverse, thinking in diverse way, culture diverse, in any way diverse, probably find something that they can add value, and frankly, that's what we are looking for. So, like, it's more around the way that we formulate our probably the what we are looking for is reflected on the outcomes, and so that's where I believe it. I can talk probably forever, but I shouldn't.
But Pinar, do you also think that the way that we construct, yes, but it's also being intentional. It's being intentional about where we look. It's intentional about how we interface with our HR and talent teams, and what we demand, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that's really important, and looking to get diverse viewpoints and diverse backgrounds, and not being afraid of that. I think for hiring managers, we're afraid of the ramp up time. How long is it going to take for someone to contribute, right? And that's kind of the thing that we hold as the standard, and maybe letting go of that for a longer term outcome.
And to that, intentionally about like literally in our own teams as well, like making sure that the team members feel safe looking for, like writing these kind of job specs, looking for the candidates, going all the way and onboarding and going to the next step. So yes, it's very important.
Sorry, Andy, go on.
I was going to say, so what would you say to encourage candidates then in terms of putting themselves forward and leaning into those types of roles?
I mean, okay. I sorry. I'm just sorry. That's fine. I just want to make sure that I don't speak all the time. So, I mean, I would say that this is an opportunity for candidates to really demonstrate, literally again, like very basic problem-solving skills, like different ways of doing things, bringing it to the table, and intentionally bringing it to the table as well. It goes both ways, and having I am quite impressed with anybody who brings up any solution in front of us in a creative way, and it's on the other hand, receiving side, it's about open mind, and which is something that we should all have in order to foster this environment. So I would say just being bold, being creative, being thoughtful, being not being afraid of asking questions and offering solutions is always a good approach. One approach, at least.
Yeah, and Pinar, I totally agree with you. And I think, obviously, part of an interview process is about the employer interviewing the candidate, but it's equally just about the other way. And so, I think certainly from the interviewing perspective, what you just described, it's bringing the same trust and approach that it sounds like you have in your team to a candidate, to giving them a preview of what it would be like to work in the team. So to me, it's treating an interview no differently than the culture that you have should the person come on board.
And I'm so glad you touched on culture, and I think that's really important for companies. You know, what is the culture? Is it inclusive? Is it open? Does it reward diversity and boldness? And I think as people look at companies who are advancing and seem, the cutting edge, it's really important to understand that culture. Does it fit? Do they have your values? I mean, we spend so much of our lives together, like more time with our work colleagues than with our families sometime. And you want that culture that there's a fit that resonates with you.
So, Emily, what would you say to the candidate that tried to fit into a mold when applying for a job? Would you force, really encourage them to be themselves and really go out on that limb, or would you say, temper it a bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think one of my strengths is that I'm super different than all of my peers, and so I look for that in my teams and everyone that I work with. So for me, I would push for that. A number of years ago, I moved from the business side of Citi into Citi Ventures, and I was the only one who wasn't a serial entrepreneur or a technologist by background, and then built a team of people like that. And I compared it at different times. That, if I were to move to some different place and start a hospital, I'm not a doctor, but I would know I would need to hire people with those skills. And so for me, building a business, building a team is about figuring out what are the skills that I don't have, that I'm not going to acquire, where I need people who are amazing at them, that in a way that I never will be able to do, and then setting them up for success and unblocking things for them. And so almost by design, that means that I need people who think differently than me, who certainly look different from me, who talk differently from me, sort of all of those things, because I'm hiring them by design to fill in my gaps. And so if that's the way that goes, you need difference of perspective, I think, in all that you do.
And we're talking a lot about soft power at the moment, but in terms of actual, pushing towards a regulation or a standard, Karen, how does your company plan to actively progress gender equality and help accelerate sustainable goal number 5?
So we have an ESG database, and for years the database is pretty granular. There are like 400 measures that we collect in terms of the data that makes up the E, S, and G pillar. And we have been collecting information on women on boards, and we made a diversity and inclusion index. With everything that happened last year with George Floyd, we decided to start to collect race metrics. And so we've been doing this partnership with Fortune to collect race metrics from Fortune 500 companies. But, any company can contribute their data to us, because we think that it's really important that when we talk about diversity and inclusion, and these days it's diversity, equity, and inclusion, that companies, that individuals have a holistic viewpoint of what that means, and not just that one measure that we've for years have put forward, which is, how many women do we have?
And Pina, can you speak for the same for your firm?
Yeah, I mean, there are many initiatives, but there is one point that I want to it will not be a specific answer, but one point that I want to point out, I want to bring up is I think that what seems to be important is the life cycle of the one's journey across within an organization is important. So it's not only about hiring, it's about making promotions, retention, development, mentoring, the whole opportunities, global opportunities. So what I am observing and what we are working on is literally going across that whole life cycle of that relationship and the individual's career and our own careers, all of us, right? And going and being intentional about it, because it looks like if you don't do that, somehow the whole chain breaks at some point. And so that's one view for you.
And if I may come back to you again, Pinar, with the digital transformation journey that you've undergone, have there been more opportunities in the market for that skill set? And how are your companies setting examples of this diverse leadership?
We are trying. That's a very hard question. So the opportunities in the job market to hire for us, you mean? I mean, if you, again, to go linking, only thing I will say is like link it back to the previous conversation, right? When you have a more open mind and acceptance that, again, digital skills can be any type of skills, and because the environment is quite broad, that the type of questions that we need to solve is about culture, is about marketing. Like literally in my organization, we have been focusing on communication, culture building. At the same time, also like more data science type of skills, and which is not exactly always common in my organization, frankly, historically, and more technology skills and understanding of the business as usual is a very important component. Like and partnering literally very, very intentionally, and changing the culture and improving the culture. Or maybe I'm not sure if it's improving is even the right way to think about it. But so there is if we agree that many different elements actually are feed into digital transformation. That means that the scope is quite broad, actually, of the type of people we're hiring, and it is, and we can see that right now. And communication is one of them. Culture, another one. Yeah.
Similar story for us, and last year, in addition, we launched an impact fund of $150 million and an additional $50 million for Black entrepreneurs. And in our first year, made 11 investments, of which half were by either female-founded companies or Black-founded companies. Some actually both, and some, including one, the Mom Project, among others, that the problems that they're trying to solve are around diversity. So in the case of the Mom Project, it creates a marketplace for companies to source largely female talent in a variety of skills. And so to me, sort of to build on what Pinar and others have said, when I think about what we're doing and our companies, could or should do, it's about, one, what are we doing for ourselves and our employees? And, there's been great ideas from this. But two, we all have suppliers, so, for us at Citi, we do quite a bit with our vendors and look for diversity in our vendors. How do we think about diversity in our clients? How do we think about diversity in the markets in which we work, and some of that soft influence that you mentioned? So it's really taking that holistic view to the role that we play in the communities, in the markets in which we operate, and for ourselves, but then also the others that we touch. How do we demonstrate our values through our own actions, and then ask for the same with those we work?
It's interesting, at this point, we get many comments from the audience. They're talking about the observations you've made around people, women in particular, needing the courage, tenacity, being creative thinkers, and what would make them flourish? How would they be encouraged to have the opportunity to develop the ideas and the solutions that they're putting forward? Is there a particular response to these new, creative, tenacious, courageous people coming through, Karen?
Well, I think that it's important to just from, I'm a mom and I have 2 girls, and I'm raising them to be courageous, to be assertive, to be outspoken, to be curious, not just about fashion and beauty, which, is traditionally the way that girls go, but also about tech, about how things work, to be civic minded. So I think all of that kind of makes up how, someone shows up and how you nurture and support this. I know from our prep session I was talking about what we do in the Bond Club and how we try to expose the scholars to different things. And Andy remarked about how his girls are digital first. So I'm going to actually punt this question to him because I think that he has a lot more to say in this area.
Sure. So I think there's the exposure to technology. So my eldest is 11, and the two eldest are obviously very familiar with a laptop and navigating around technology devices through home learning, but they're doing a lot of stuff around coding, using Code Kingdom, I think it is, alongside Minecraft and Roblox. So they're getting exposure at a very early age, both from fun and also academically. So it's all part of that exposure to technology, then ultimately exposure to the roles that goes back to my earlier point about what roles are required to support and evolve technology. But I think as well as sort of leaning in and how you show up, I think it's also very important that there's sort of two pillars that sit alongside equity and diversity and inclusion, which is sort of storytelling, we kind of call it, and allyship, right? So it's finding and also making sure the culture exists for those individuals to find mentors in the organization that can help them steer, that sit outside line management. So there's a node of connectivity and support, because you want people to come into the organization. You're looking for that talent to bring creativity and energy and innovation. So you want to encourage it. So that's the first point. And then the second thing outside of that, around the storytelling, is the mentoring other people's journeys, learn from other people's scars, have, again, that kind of network and connectivity that allow to understand whether it's from a pre-sales journey to empower sales, whether it's from a delivery element to empower innovation through delivery. That storytelling sits in all different elements of organizations, and I think is a really important pillar, as well as encouraging the right people to show up, to support them once they're in the door. And that is quite difficult given current times, because we have to do that remotely, as does everybody else. But I think it's that aftercare, if you like, that nurture, that allowing the person to sort of unleash their potential is kind of very important.
And we're having from the audience another comment around quick onboarding and hitting the ground running does not mean long-term value add to a team. So what are the metrics? How do you measure all these factors that we're talking about now? Is there a different approach that we need, or is it just looking beyond standard ways of measuring people in the short term, looking to a different approach?
I think that's a challenge for all of us to take a longer view. I know for me, I think about one of the things we look at in marketing is the impact in year. Are you going to have impact in year? Is this going to help your in-year KPIs? But having the latitude, and even for, to just the longer time horizon, not with just your people, but just taking a review it's a challenge for all of us.
Yeah, I mean, just only like maybe one advice in general, right? I mean, because I see it happening all the time, and also amongst like all of us, right? Which is like, okay, so there is like having a big vision is, I think, important, but then being able to deliver really incremental results in the direction of that vision is also important. So I think that combination and being that, like doing that right, is is a constant challenge for for me, I'm sure very personal experience, and but it is quite important, because if you don't do that, you will just be delivering incremental results but no real significant impact. But if you keep on thinking about only the big vision, it won't actually, that's not exactly the right way of getting there either. You need to be like progressing in that direction. And I think we should give our teams space to formulate that and iterate and be comfortable with that, and frankly work together. I mean, that's a hard one. Only thing, like, metric shouldn't be how fast you start delivering. Metric should be how you combine these two, maybe zooming in, zooming out, or however you call that, whatever your language is, approaches.
And wouldn't you say that's true for individuals as well? Because I think a lot of times we think about our own careers as being a ladder versus a lattice, and really taking that sidestep and learning that skill or getting experience in that area in order to strengthen you to get to the next step, right? So I don't think we sidestep enough, and even doing things that are a bit out of our comfort zone.
I also have some comments now from the audience I'd like your responses on. So some of them have said, everyone is unique regardless of gender. By doing the opposite of fitting in, you'd bring something new that challenges the process positively and effectively. Another one said, a design mindset drives an inclusive organisation. What do we think about those comments? Do we think that they're, Emily?
I mean, I agree with the comments, and well said from whoever it was from. I think that, yeah, in both cases.
Yeah, I was thinking hallelujah, hallelujah. So that's the first word that came to my mind.
Well, the design mindset is key, isn't it, in terms of it couples with the user journey and how to interface with the client base, and around the whole digitalization and democratization of services all sit within that design thinking, and bringing in and bringing new tools into the picture about how you do way of working. Again, that's kind of been reflected in COVID in terms of using tools like this, but virtual whiteboards, design thinking, design workshops help the organization understand what it is it's evolving and how that overlays with the client challenges that sit within it. So I think that's paramount.
And may I also explore, because often we hear about role models being important. Do any of you have particular role models you've held up and followed during your career in one respect or another?
When I forget who had the comment earlier, and they were talking about mentors. I think a lot of times, we enter into these mentor programs and we're matched, and we don't really date, you don't get the time. It's not a good match. There's no chemistry. For me, some of my mentors, they don't even know they're mentoring me, because I am pretty open with the things that I want to work on personally, developmental areas. And so I look for people in the organization who have that particular thing. And so if I'm working on, I don't know, something in leadership, and there's right now someone who's pretty senior that I've been tracking and having conversations with, and, having that mentor relationship without it actually being formally defined. And so I think that's really important. And so if you find someone who's, knocking at your door or seeking time with them, I think, be generous, be open, and invest in other people, because I think it's fluid these days. It's not like this, oh, that's my mentor. It changes.
Yeah, no, so Karen, I very much agree with you. Lots of people probably don't know they're my mentors, but I think in general, sort of trying to learn from anyone, irrespective of if they're in your organization, outside of the organization, more senior than you, more junior than you, a peer, sort of then how can those individuals contribute to raise, at least for me, like raising my own ambitions around skills or things that I want to do and setting an example, and then can I learn from them? And, particularly when I think about individuals in my team, I have the amount I've learned in the last year from people who work for me is extraordinary, right? So they are my role models in a lot of ways. And so it's, I think it comes back to looking for greatness in everyone. And that, that also leads to positivity, because if you're looking for the strengths in everyone when you interact with them, you leave things, I think, with a much more, optimistic and happy point of view, and you train yourself to see it. But then also for me, and then I push myself to try to do those things myself. So it's, anyone with whom I interact a fair bit can be a mentor.
Tina, would you agree?
Yeah, it's the same, right? I mean, I have many people who inspired me through, like, since school days across throughout my life, and I always remember, like, literally they're all like, you collect bits and pieces throughout your journey. That, I mean, it's quite actually fun. And but then also literally this whole, like, I am learning just so much, like from like my team, others, and people reach out for mentoring, and frankly it's a two-way street. Like, I get excited, I'm like, oh my god, and frankly it always goes both ways. Like, I don't just, I'm asking for, okay, actually could we talk about that, can I learn about this? So it's really, I mean, again, it's a journey. It's you just go from, you just pick up the pieces, and that's fun. And I'm assuming that everybody, like the mentorship relationships also are going that way. One thing that I need to say though is I do appreciate being also organized about it, and very, very pointed about it as well. Like, in fact, like literally I speak with colleagues who literally ask for very specific help for a very specific topic, and that actually I respect as well. Like, how it gives me almost a problem-solving exercise as well somehow, and it goes probably both ways. I learn from also that topic. I'm like, actually, one of the questions recently was something that I was dealing with literally, and I learned from. So important.
And a final question, if I may, given that change rests upon personal commitment, what would you suggest our listeners consider doing this week, this month, and this year to encourage support for all minorities, not just women, to enable their own careers and the careers of others? Emily, should we go to you first?
Sure. So, I mean, I think for me, it's really about pushing myself to be uncomfortable. And if I haven't done something in the spirit of, diversity, equity, and inclusion to make myself uncomfortable, then, I probably should be doing more.
So I would add to that and say, you've got to push yourself, but it's also the ownership that comes with it. Take ownership of that challenge, because ownership is what will ultimately drive the focus to try and overachieve it.
I can. I'm sorry.
Pina, go on.
Just maybe one word for me. It's just listen, like actively listen, and that works.
I would say care, and a lot of us think we care, but we're so self-focused, and it's just caring about the next generation, caring about those around us, the community, in sharing. We have so much. I feel like, we have so much to offer, so much to learn. And I think if I adopt a more caring mindset, that's the thing that will carry me and help others.
I think that's a great message to finish on. So caring mindset, caring for others will help us all succeed more. So thank you to all our panelists today for their participation. And thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed today's conversation, there is a recently published report on the gender pay gap and investment strategies that you can download by following the link in the comments or scanning the QR code on the screen now. I'm Deborah Regal, and happy International Women's Day. Thank you.